Thank you for coming back in. I was told by Amanda, in fact, I was instructed by Amanda and Andrea that this has to be the session with madness and mayhem. And nudity, allegedly. I can guarantee you, though, that no one on this stage will be stripping, thank God. Yet. Did you say yet? Yes. Not at the beginning, but perhaps at the end. Peter, where are you going? There's nudity. I just told you. Really? Okay. So, session 5, we are going to be talking about trends. No, where's my slide? Everybody has a slide, but I don't get one, Amanda. Where are names? I was depending on you so that I could see everyone's names. I can't remember names, you know. Really? Okay. Anyway, luckily for you, I wrote it down. So, in a highly competitive OTT world, what is being done to ensure high-quality, market-driven, accessible content with local culture and language also preserved? I think there are many more issues embedded in this sentence, and it's not necessarily what's driving the development of local content. I have 5 panelists, and they represent, I think, the entire spectrum of delivery platforms. We have Mo from Myanmar, who is more or less the public broadcaster, public service broadcaster. Then we have Joe from 21st Century Fox, and he's got everything from satellite to cable to free-to-air to online and anything else? Submarines? No? No, okay, not yet. And then we have Netflix, thank you, and iflix. No, this way, t-shirt. iflix, right. And then we will pour cold water over everyone because we have a regulator too. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about my brother Aung here from Vietnam. Okay. So this, did you see there were different types of shout-outs? So Andy was trying to whistle, failing miserably. Some other fellas were shouting this side and, you know, in different harmony and different keys, but that really is the fodder for local content. I'm not going to take 20 minutes, but I just have a couple of things to say before I hand the mic over. First of all, what does drive great local content development? Obviously, demand, competition. While others have got good content, you want to have greater content and better content so that you have more eyeballs. Next, a conducive, cohesive, facilitative, regulatory environment, ideally. So these are a couple of things which we all know we need in order for us to develop good local content, taking into account language and cultures and norms. So that's not really the problem, but there are other issues. So we'll hear from the 5 of them to see what these issues are, depending on where they play. First of all, we're going to go in the order of Mo, Joe, Michelle, Kuek, and then Aung. Now, I had a difficult decision. I didn't know whether to put Netflix and iflix together and then say fight to the death. But I thought, I think it's better to put them together and put Aung aside so that they don't, or the regulator doesn't spit on them or the other side. Never mind. So, Mo, you will start first, and then we'll see if we have any issues that we want to raise after her presentation so that we won't have to wait till the end. Let's try and interject in between, because I think this is a topic where you probably have something burning to ask after each of the presentations. So, no holds barred, we'll start. Mo, please.
Okay, thank you, Sulyna, my chairperson. And I'm Mo Zhang, and this is my first time in IIC. So I would like to present about the Myanmar's broadcasting industry in a short detail. Also, there are look at the broadcasting industry in Myanmar. We have the state-owned media, which is MRTV, Myanmar Radio and Television, which is under the Ministry of Information still, and the MRTV is trying to transform the state-owned media into the public service broadcaster in a future, in 1 or 2 years now. And another one is the private channels. So we have the MRTV, which is run by the Ministry of Information, and the Myanmar Group, which is run by the Ministry of Defense, and some private channels which are joint venture with the MRTV. So they are the Forever Group, and this is the computer group. And another one is the Sulyna Media Group. This is the private media group, the business media business group. So right now, we have the analog channels and digital channels. And of course, we have the 7 free-to-air channels by the MRTV and Myanmar and the private channels, and the digital channels for the set-top box and some paid channels over the set-top box, and the Skynet Media ran the direct-to-home service by the satellite carrier. So we have a lot of the television broadcasting system. We have the terrestrial. Terrestrial is run by the MRTV, and the digital by the Ministry of Defense and the private media groups. The standard for the broadcasting standard is the ASEAN standard, ASEAN Digital Broadcasting Standard. That is the DVB-T2, and when we look at the MRTV, because I work for the MRTV, so I would like to explain a little about the MRTV. The radio broadcasting started in 1946, and the television only in 1980. So the television broadcasting adapted the Japanese standard of NTSC. And then we have the consumer, regarding to the population, we have the 51 million people in Myanmar. So the audience market is more or less the big one for the TV broadcasters. So it can be said that the Myanmar's broadcast industry is small compared to the neighboring countries like the India and China, but we have the broadcasting industry keeps growing. And the both TV and radio transmission, according to the statistics of the MRTV and the other TV channels, it covers almost the 80% of the country by the relay stations. So it will be the huge market soon, and the broadcasting for the broadcasting contents, the local people surely like to watch the local production, the Myanmar film, Myanmar movies, Myanmar videos, and they also like to watch the Korean drama series on TV. That's why we have a lot of Korean drama series on TVs, and even for the free-to-air channel and for the paid channels also. And we have some foreign contents like Discovery or the Fox movies or premium movies or something like that. And the most popular is the football matches, the English Premier League matches. And so for the digital content, Myanmar is now at the transition of for the broadcasting. We are trying to change the analog from analog to the digital one. So most of the local contents are now produced in the SD format, but it will change soon to the HD format, I mean the high resolution format. So foreign contents are more or less liked by the Myanmar consumers. And regarding to the content regulatory body, at present, the Ministry of Information still acts as the regulatory body, but we will have the independent regulatory body soon, because in 2015, it was last year, we enacted the Myanmar's first ever broadcasting law. And we have another law regarding to the content regulation. It was drafted by the Myanmar Press Council, and it deals with the code of ethics or code of conduct and the similar to the program products in for the TV and radio. So soon we will have the independent regulatory body for the content regulation. And even so, Myanmar enacted the broadcasting law, we don't have the independent regulatory body. So at present, we are trying to form the selection committee for the newly independent members, elected members for the independent board of the content regulatory body. We will call the Myanmar Broadcasting Council. And for the relating to the communication, because we have, in Myanmar, we have the different ministry. We have the Ministry of Information for print media and broadcast media, but we have the Ministry of Telecommunications for the frequency allocation and spectrum allocation plan. So the Ministry of Information is to deal with the Ministry of Communication for the allocation of the broadcast frequency. So at present, we are not clear that whether the Myanmar's Broadcasting Council or the newly formed Myanmar's Communication Regulatory Council has to deal with the online content regulation, because in Myanmar the new media is favorite, is the most favorite among the young people. So our broadcasting people trying to attract them for to become the audience, to become our audience. So for the content regulation, for the online content regulation, at present we are not clear about who will govern the online content regulation in Myanmar. So when we look at the telecommunication sectors, a lot has been changed in the country last few years. In the past, the price for the SIM card for mobile phone was very expensive. But now it is very, very cheap. And with international telecom providers on the scene, namely the Telenor and the Ooredoo, Myanmar's internet connection is becoming faster and faster. So according to the statistics, there are 40 million mobile phone users, and the internet users will reach up to over 20 million. So we will welcome the OTT opportunities for the new media. So it will be a big chance for the iflix and Netflix in the Myanmar market. But the great challenge there will be the policy and regulation for the digital players. So that's my short presentation of the Myanmar's broadcasting industry and the OTT potential in Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. So, coverage, you said, is about 80%, 51 million population. And do you have a thriving content industry? Yes. So you have quite a bit of local content.
Yeah, local media company houses. I think the number of 100 and plus maybe. But the small content media hub, media industries, but the small one.
Small ones, okay. Interestingly enough, well, it's not so surprising to hear that Korean content is very popular in Myanmar. Korean content is very popular in ASEAN, and I can imagine that it's popular in Asia. In fact, when we watch the Korean channel, we can see that it's also being aired in Berlin or in Prague or in New York or in South America. So that's proliferated, and we'll talk about that later. You heard there is opportunity. You're nodding away. You plan to launch in Myanmar? When?
We have a team on the ground now, so hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay. Netflix?
We are in Myanmar.
You are in Myanmar. There you go. Fight to the death. Okay. No burning questions, right? We're going to wait. We're going to wait. Andrew, I see you. I think this is the point where I say to Google, or I say to my friends who are sitting with Google, please restrain him. It might get ugly. There will be some mention of YouTube at some point. So Andrew, we are relying on you to be your usual gentlemanly self. However, Michael, since you're sitting close to him, just if he flies out of the chair, grab him. Joe, you're next. Joe is dressed like a regulator. Look at him, so handsome. Tie and all that, you know? Yeah, okay, go on. You need the mic? Oh, you need the clicker.
PowerPoint and a clicker.
Right. Oh, Joe has slides.
Yes, that's it. Wonderful. Clicker would be great.
Or you can say next.
As we say in Boston, a clicker. All right, we're rolling. Thank you so much. All right, let's see if I can drive this. I can look down there. All right, that's forward and that's backward. Okay, so I'm Joe, and I've got 16 slides, and I'm going to do it in 5 minutes. Okay, so it's 11:41 right now by my clock. So we'll do OTT, and we're going to tell a story. We're going to say 2 big things that we see. OTT Asia-Pac regulatory. Let's take a look together. Okay, I'm reading quite effectively. 21st Century Fox is the parent company, the Fox parent company. A couple of years ago, we split News Corp as a newspaper company, created a new name for the parent for the media entertainment company, 21st Century Fox. A little bit confusing because we also own 20th Century Fox, but I end up making that explanation every day of my life. Okay, in Asia, what we are, the clients that I serve, so to speak, internally are Fox channels and Fox Sports and Fox Movies and National Geographic channels and Star channels. That's one group. The other group is 20th Century Fox, which is putting movies into the theaters. So it's TV channels, theaters, movies in theaters, and lastly is India. You see the Star on the map of India. Star India is a very, very large Indian content creation company. We make shows, dramas, and movies in Hindi and 7 other Indian languages. So that's us, and that's who I serve in Asia. Problem number 1 is this. It's a great picture, isn't it? It's a tilted playing field. It's the best one we could find of a tilted field. So that's our problem number 1, and I think this will be a nice with the regulators and the iflix and Netflix we can discuss. But with the room, I'll just take you through it. So what does it exactly mean, the tilted field? Well, you have these players on one side. So in Malaysia, you got Astro. In Singapore, you got StarHub and Singtel. Here you have True Visions, and then the channels on those platforms are HBO and Fox Movies and etc. So these guys are regulated. You see at the bottom, there's content controls here. There's license fees. There's taxes. The whole shebang that we've all grown up with, so to speak, attaches, which is fine. We run businesses here for many years. This is all good. It's just the way it is. Now, on the new side, iflix, Hook, YouTube, Netflix, etc., less content controls, less license fees, less tax, etc. This is the tilt, right? Okay. So now you're wondering where I come out on this. Right, because you know where they come out. And the regulator side is more of a question mark as well. But so where do we come out? Because we play in the OTT space, but we've grown up in the old space. So what do we want to happen? There are license fees, there's contribution to content funds, there's new channel approvals that we have to seek, there's rate regulation of our traditional channels in some markets. It's pretty heavy. I mean, we've always lived with it, with a smile, running businesses, but it's pretty heavy stuff. So what do we want? We would like less regulation for existing players, and we do not wish for more regulation of these guys. Okay, so we're not trying, because the field is tilted, and we could ask that all the full panoply apply to them. That would be one choice to deal with the tilt. But okay, we're like Hillary Clinton. We're going high. We're taking the high road, and we say, hey, they're okay. And for us, maybe over time, there could be less. So we're not asking for a flash cut or it's each market is individual, and we can work over time to lighten the load a little bit on the traditional. So that's our take there. One special case, India. So India is a bit acute, so the tilt is even more aggressive. That's why I spun it like that. I do all my own PowerPoint. You can see that. Very clever. Sorry, I'm cracking myself up here. So you see in India that the traditional side on the left, companies like Star and Z and Reliance and Tata Sky and Bharti Airtel, these are the traditional companies, very heavily regulated by, in particular, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. Is TRI in the house? TRI? T-R-A-I? Okay, no worries. So very heavy, including rate regulations. So that if you have a channel on a pay television platform in India, the price is regulated, both at the wholesale level and the consumer side. It's very, very old school. And on the news side, if you see on the right, we have Amazon is actually really pushing hard into the content space in India. Pretty amazing stuff, actually. They're making some great Indian language shows. Netflix is there. Reliance has an OTT platform, and we have one ourselves called Hotstar. So with this tilt, we just ask, you see at the bottom, please, TRAI, et cetera, please try not to add additional regulatory burdens to this side. We can talk later about, reducing the burden here, but in the meantime, please, don't add more. It would be our position. So pretty clearly trying not to beat around the bush. It's there it is. So in summarize, then I'll move on. The tilt will sort itself out over time, we think, country by country, and we're trying to engage with all policymakers on this topic. We do have that one common request that in the meantime, the tilt is what it is, but please don't make the tilt worse. Additional, please. Humble request. On to problem 2, because I have, I'm maybe 4 minutes in.
You're 5.59 minutes in.
Online piracy. This is the sad clown. Everyone like the sad clown? Here we go. In Asia, we have a theory that piracy is a little bit worse here in some of our markets than even North America and Europe. So why? Because of broadband speed, high device proliferation, and finally these boxes. Who's familiar with these boxes? They come loaded with pirate content, and you can just cut your pay TV subscription for life, and you're good. It's like a legal streaming device, we call it. So those 3 add up. Let's take a look at some of the markets in question. So we see Malaysia, 30 pirate sites in the top 500. The Philippines, same. Thailand, 37 pirate sites in the top. You can see Netflix and iflix and Astro in there, and the red sites are all heavy rogue pirate sites. So when we launch OTT, these guys launch OTT, we launch OTT, this is who we're competing with. These sites in red are all free, and the consumers get there. Often, I just did this search in the back of the room with while in Thailand. So you search watch, and you get the autocomplete, movies online free, and then the first page is all pirate sites. Putlocker, 123 Movies are the first 2 results, not Hook, not iflix, not Netflix. So that search pattern, delivers those ranking results, basically, that drives the traffic to the red sites. Bit of a problem. When you get to one of the sites, Putlocker, what do you see? You see Kung Fu Panda, pirate, next to prostitution, pornography, malware, scams. This is what who's got kids? I got a 12-year-old daughter. If she ends up at Putlocker, when she's on the internet, this is what she sees when she's looking for Kung Fu Panda. This is not a pleasant ecosystem that we're living in. But it's the status quo, so there you go. The legal framework to deal with all this, totally outdated. All these sites are based offshore. There's nothing law enforcement onshore can do. As industry rights holders, we send notices nowhere. It's a bit of a joke. We call it emptying the ocean with a teaspoon. And it's a joke. It's a 1998 solution for a 2016 world. Okay. Last slide. To end on a positive note, because I just brought the room down with that last one, I think. There's 2 countries that are doing well here to address this ugly ecosystem. South Korea and that's the UK. they do the advertising is being dealt with, search is being reviewed, and blocking of these rogue sites is being applied. That's 3 legs of a stool, and you make an impact. And then legitimate OTT players can have less headwind. Done. Sorry.
8.55. Okay. Okay, I know I'm the chair, and I'm supposed to be very objective and fair. Put Locker is no longer available in Malaysia.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's still got quite a high ranking.
But it's no longer available in Malaysia because we did something to it.
Ah, yes. Oh,
Thank you.
Thank
I don't know about the others, but 2 weeks ago, I went to a dinner, and all my friends came to me and said, "What are you doing? You're blocking all these great sites." Like, I had no idea. But apparently our enforcement guys had gone out, and there had been so many complaints about these sites that we actually restricted access to these sites. So, Joe, I hear you.
No, that's great. I should have actually put Malaysia up there as well. You guys are doing quite well in this regard.
Can you say that louder? Thank you. One more
Malaysia's
time.
doing very well.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
the MCMC in particular.
Thank you. Back to being a chair. So, problem, you had 3 problems. The tilted playing field, that was great. Number 2, piracy, online piracy. And the third one, what did you say was the third one? You said that 2 countries are doing something good about it.
Yeah, it's just the 2 countries doing well to address the second problem.
Oh, okay, 2 countries doing well to address the second problem. Okay, so that's a note for regulators here. Any burning questions for Joe? Not yet? Really? Please, gentlemen at the end. Oops.
I was going to wait at the end, but since you asked for it. Joe, well, I hope you listened to the last conversation we had before the break. I think it was Mohammed that gave us the joke about the guard, you know, who let people in until was asked. Because what I hear you sounding like the person who talked to the guard. But what I say is that, what would you say if you are working for Netflix? I'm sure your presentation will be totally different, because I hear you at 21st century asking for less regulation, asking for, you know, to level the ground. But from what Mohammed said, this issue is something like people on the OTT platforms now and the kind of services they are giving. The traditional operators, because they pay a lot of money for their licenses, they are whining, but those cries and those talks should be lessened, because the way things are going, if you can't operate effectively where you are, what would be suggested to you by a typical regulator is get onto the other platform, become a Netflix, have another company, play in that market, and it can even things out for you. That's just my comment. Thank you.
I'll let Joe answer that question, and then we'll see whether we can take another one. I see you at the end. Thank you. Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just agree with everything that the gentleman said. I mean, we're in markets where we are the one regulated and have been for years, and pay the license fees and do the content controls and you know, seek approval for a new channel launch or even to change programming on a channel. And we're okay with that. We've built businesses on that, you know, throughout the markets in Asia, and you know, we work with the regulators and deliver the product to the consumer, and we'll just continue to do that, and you know, we'll still be competing with Netflix in that regard, and hopefully, you know, over time, some of that legacy regulation will relax, but it'll be country by country and regulation by regulation. So we're okay.
I'm going to ask a question to the audience first before I take another one. How many of us in this room watch TV? whether it's direct to home or cable, how many of us watch TV still? Okay, quite a fair number. How many of us just consume our content on our devices and on the internet? Solely on the internet. Okay. So, there's still a market for TV. You have a job. I'm being nice to you because I may need a job after this. Thank you.
But you're right. Well, like we will. The last part of your question was, will we go online? And yeah. I mean, we'll start to go online too. We have.
Yes, because I read in your website that you are online.
Hotstar in India is a
There
good
you go.
example.
Yes. Please, very quick one.
Thank you. I'm George from Ghana. Joe, you first call for less regulation, and in the next minute, you congratulate two countries for blocking rogue sites. I see apparent contradiction there.
Great question.
Because that's a regulatory
You're on your
convention.
own here.
Thank goodness I have an answer, but it's a great
So
question.
please unpack for us your call for less regulation. What should the regulator do and what should the regulator not do? Thank you.
That's a great question. Luckily, I have had this question before. You know, a regulator looks for market failure, and the proliferation of rogue websites coming into the country from offshore, competing with legitimate players in your country, that's a market failure, and that's appropriate application of regulation. That's the short answer.
Joe doesn't want to get on our bad side. Those of you who went, ooh. All right, I'll just move along now. So, from Joe, we're going to move to Netflix. Okay, Kuek, the sky's the limit. No slides, right?
Thank you, Sulyna.
Okay.
So, yes, no slides, and I think the audience should know that last night at dinner, Sulyna came over to my table and said, Kuek, I want the panel to be fun, and I want it to be informal, and I don't want you to have slides. So let's just put for the record that when it comes to the use of PowerPoint, Netflix is fully compliant with the Malaysian regulators' expectations.
Okay.
So, but very briefly, and I'll try to keep to the 5-minute rule. For those who are not as familiar as Netflix, as some of us, especially me, might be, let me explain a little bit more about the company. So the company started in 1998, delivering cutting-edge technology, and that was delivering DVDs by post to individual homes back in 1998. In 2007, there was a very controversial move of the company, and we moved into the streaming of internet content. The markets did not initially respond well to that. Thankfully, I think the business model has been validated by the market, and more importantly, by consumers, that the model of consuming TV content anytime, anywhere, is something that consumers want. And I think off the bat, whether you're an industry player or whether you're a regulator, if you have more consumer choice and consumers are more satisfied with what is going on in industry, it's just a net win. I think we can agree on that upfront. When it comes to, great questions that Sulyna kicked us off with, like, what drives great local content, amongst many other questions. I think for us, when we look at our service, we think that digital content brings great benefits to emerging markets and developed markets alike. I'm very encouraged by what Ms. Mo has described as developments in Myanmar, and we see that ourselves. Whenever you have faster and cheaper internet, it's great for the entire industry, it's great for the economy. And I think digital content in many of the emerging markets is very often the entry point where internet adoption happens. So for many of people living outside of the urban city centers, what drives them first to the use of internet? It could be on mobile, because that's where people get easier access. The entry point is usually when they want to seek out entertainment, and it could be advertising-based video on demand, it could be other forms of entertainment, but that's the entry point. And when I hear about the exciting possibilities from the last panel, the IoT panel about healthcare, transport, e-government, I think it certainly is a step in the right direction to start off with entertainment, but that leads to greater internet adoption across the board. I think something else we see change about the digital content industry is that when you have new players like ourselves, like iflix, like Hotstar, is that you create a new marketplace for local content. Previously, you know, if Ms. Mo, and Ms. Mo would know this amongst, like the rest of us as well, producing local TV does not come cheap. Monetization and making sure that you're in the black if you stick to local content is not something that is always easy. When you have a new marketplace, for example, if iflix is entering Myanmar, if a company like Netflix is entering Myanmar, you create a new revenue source that supports local content. And I think that changes the economics when you think about whether production is something that's commercially viable or not. I think for Netflix, we are very happy that because we serve a global audience and it wasn't easy building up to our base, we now serve 83 million households across the world. But when we hit this level of scale, it changes our calculus in terms of thinking like, hey, if there's a very niche art house film or if it's a very niche documentary, whether or not the economics make sense for us to fund a project like that. I think what is even more interesting for us is that in the recent 2 years, we now have hit a scale where we are able to say that, you know what, we're going to do a fully French movie or a French production, or we're going to do a Bollywood movie and have it purely in local language, filmed on-site locally, and the economics of it is going to work out. We can bring a greater production value for that. Because when you have that scale and that universality of experience across a wider audience, the numbers just make sense. At the end of the day, we're running a business. And I think this is where this is the learning from Korean content as well. On our service, we have things like Descendants of the Sun that is very well received in markets like the US. I think when Korean content finds a global audience, the monetization model becomes different, and then more value can be added to the production. So that is how we see OTT services and digital content helping the creation of local content. I think lastly, to touch on Joe's point about piracy, something that's very close to our hearts as well, we see, at least for us, when we launch in new markets, piracy rates come down. There's a direct correlation. And these come from third-party sources. It's not us saying it. We've seen this in US. We've seen it in the US, of course, but that's our home market. We've seen this in the UK. We've seen this in Australia. And we've seen this in Canada. Sorry?
Carry on.
Oh, okay. We've seen this in Canada, and the number is staggering. So that's a 50% reduction rate in piracy. I think that was a cue call for me to speed things up. I just like to add that these are things that we think we are contributing to the local ecosystem. But let me be clear, the kind of benefits we think we can bring in terms of helping internet adoption in emerging markets, or helping local content, or helping drive piracy rates down, can only happen if there are preconditions such as the openness of the internet. So net neutrality rules become very important for a company like us. And also the affordability of data is another very important precondition for companies like iflix, ourselves, or Hotstar to thrive. So I'm not sure if I've exceeded or I'm under the 5-minute mark.
7.24.
Ooh, I'll try harder next time.
It's okay. Really? You're okay?
I'm
All right, well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
One question. So you're talking about production and you're saying it's extremely expensive. We all know how expensive it is to produce good quality content. But you're going up against, and this is what I think, you're going up against teenagers who do their videos on their iPhones and teach other teenagers how to use makeup and they're getting millions of views a day on YouTube. And they're earning big bucks, and it's not just one or two, many of them do. I read recently on Forbes, I think Forbes was naming the top 25 YouTube earners, and they earn a lot of money. Now, these guys don't go into huge production costs, but they are getting the eyeballs. So I would imagine that this would be competition for the three of you. Joe, right? Okay, just hold the thought. We'll come back to it, okay? Because I'm going to let Michelle present first. Can we hold any questions for iflix and Netflix for now? Let's let Michelle do this. And this is where I think she has a warning. Okay, it's not so much a warning, because I used it as something to lure you in, the nudity portion. So there is some nudity.
Full frontal nudity.
Full frontal nudity. So those of you who are going to be extremely offended, please close your eyes when you can see all 2 seconds of it. Can we hit the video? Thank you. No, the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, the video is working. Just a brief insight into iflix, because we are a new player to the market. We only launched last June in Malaysia and the Philippines. We've since launched in 4 other Asian markets and are slowly hitting Africa and the Middle East and Latin America as well. So just this is an insight into the product and the experience. The video seems to have stopped. So we'll move on to the next slide. And I will do it. So in terms of our mission is to lead the online entertainment revolution in emerging markets only on a global basis and redefine television for the next 1 billion people. A little bit about our product. We have over 2,000 seasons of 900 shows, over 30 exclusives like Mr. Robot, Black Sails, Fargo, over 30 updated to the latest season, over 3,000 movies. We have a dedicated protected kids section. We are also able to download content and watch offline. It's available for download on every device, no advertisements, no contracts, and all for the price of a single pirated DVD. So in terms of the market conditions, in emerging markets, the middle class population is growing. Mobile user base is set to explode by 2020, over 3 billion. Smartphone adoption is skyrocketing. By 2020, set to be around 65%. And video is expected to comprise 70% of all mobile data. However, broadband coverage is not quite there in terms of mobile internet usage at present. There are those that do have coverage but are not subscribing to mobile broadband. And some of the barriers to entry are up on the screen here, but the key barrier seems to be the lack of awareness and locally relevant content. So more so than affordability and lack of digital literacy, it's really about locally relevant content. The other piece that we've spoken about a lot already is piracy. In the emerging markets, the piracy market's around $6 billion a year. If you include, throw Latin America into that as well, you're talking about $8 billion. So it's obviously a massive market. And actually, piracy data is something that we use when we're looking at content acquisition. So iflix was essentially designed for the emerging markets. Rather than show a slide which has us up against our friends at Netflix or anyone else, I thought it'd be more interesting to put us up against piracy, because we actually see piracy as being our greatest competitor. iflix is obviously very affordable. Our retail price is $2.50 on average across markets. But we essentially, our main proposition is hard bundling with telcos, which means no additional cost to the consumer. You can stream to television. We're available on all devices. And we see ourselves as a hyper-local player. We are a localised service with local content. We subtitle all our Western content. It works on low internet speeds. As I said, we partner with telcos in every market that we enter into, and we collaborate with regulators. So the first thing that we do when we enter a market is survey the local regulatory scene, identify whether we need a license to operate and these censorship regulations. We're actually going through a process at the moment of getting licensed to enter Vietnam. And we have censorship guidelines in every single market that we go into. So we develop a separate set of guidelines in every market that we go into. So our content supply, we have relationships with over 150 of the Hollywood studios, as well as regional and local content. Our split is roughly about 40% Hollywood content, and the other 60 is made up of regional content, the popular Korean content, Japanese content, Chinese content, and of course local content. We will not launch in a market without a decent amount of local content. So I just wanted to give you a glimpse of how we censor content. There are a couple of methods that we use to censor content, but it's a balancing act, because we don't want to over-censor, because that just basically sends people back to piracy. So it's a very fine line of trying not to impede on the storylines and cut out content, but we want to be very sensitive to cultural norms and sensibilities, but without driving people back to the very healthy piracy market. So if we could just cue the video.
Come, you haven't tasted your gift.
Oh, that was not the video.
That wasn't the video.
Can we show the full video?
Yes,
Just getting to the good bit.
Yeah, having sold, yeah.
Can we try again?
We're trying again? Thank you. Andrea, please don't put it in your report that the Muslim woman was sharing the session with the nudity. Thank you. Maybe Michelle can say something else before the...
Okay, so essentially it shows three methods of censoring. So it's recutting without disrupting the dialogue and the story flow, so that we essentially don't show the full frontal nudity, but without necessarily cutting it out. So we camera angles moving away from sensitive areas, and we obscure, like there was what you would have seen is a scene in a bath where we have a naked woman in the bath, and what we've done is we put bubbles over bodily parts so that we don't show those. And in some cases we have removed titles in certain markets that just are not culturally acceptable. We've removed a couple of things in Thailand actually, and a title in Malaysia as well, where it's just, we feel that it's not culturally acceptable. And I will say as well, we self-censor, essentially.
Did you close the door behind you?
I can see your boobies.
Good for you. Close the door and sit down. Close the door behind you.
These are the bubbles I
I can see your
mentioned.
boobies.
And this was just, as I said, removing titles that we don't feel are appropriate. And obviously, as I said, we self-censor according to these rules. We have censorship guidelines for every market that our teams follow. And if there is ever an issue that we're advised of, then we'll edit and or pull the content immediately upon any complaints. And actually, we've had very few. I think we had one issue in Malaysia, which we dealt with, I think, within 5 hours. So that's worked really well. So a big part of our model is our telco partnerships. Ideally, we launch in every market with a telco. These are some of our telco partnerships in each of the markets that we've launched in. And these are really deep partnerships in the sense of most of them are full hard bundling deals, so with either fixed or mobile packages of telcos. And obviously the rationale for the telco is around customer acquisition, customer maintenance, lowering churn, just increasing the stickiness with their customers, offering a differentiated offering. So by offering these video products, it's a value-added service for customers, and also we've seen that it leads to higher data usage for the telco as well. So it's a partnership that works very much for both sides. And this is just an example of a partnership with Digi, where there was 12 months free iflix, or iflix sponsored by Digi for 12 months for customers. So essentially, I think just in conclusion, we know that there is a high demand for both international and local content in our markets, that legal supply of content hasn't kept up with the demand. And we're here to change that through a highly localised approach and a deep integration into the local ecosystem. Everywhere we're launching, we're setting up a local presence. We're paying taxes. We have local customer service on the ground. We promote local content. So we see ourselves as a very hyper-local player. Obviously, the benefits to content providers is that they actually get paid for their content, as opposed to piracy and wide distribution. The benefits to the telco industry, as I said, is around acquisition, maintenance, and monetization of their customers by providing a video product like an iflix. And the benefit to consumers is access to a large amount of content, a mix of content, as well as personalisation and localisation. We subtitle, as I said, all our Western content, and all for a very affordable price. So that's what we are bringing to the emerging markets.
Thank you.